Taylor Swift's Willow, and before that Sting with One Fine Day. Hopefully it's a cloudy day with rain dropping out of the sky. Ricky Lambert's been tracking this at Flow News 24, and Ricky, normally we on the Sports Fix have all these footy scores, but I thought we might go and have some rainfall scores because I reckon people might be even more excited about that.
Yeah, there's some teams out there that have gone without a win for a while. I think the Farmers Rain Gauge has gone without a win for a while as well.
Yeah, the premiership table looks something like this. In South Australia, year to date, in say places like the Upper Eyre Peninsula, about between 25 and 50 mil, very dry. In the Mallee and the mid-north, some places have got just over 50 mil and then up to 100 mil. Then, say the lower southeast, Barossa and the lower York Peninsulas have been around that 100 mil sort of mark. So in Victoria, we've had 50 to 100 mil across the Upper Wimmera and the Mallee, and about 25 to 50 mil in the Oyen area. And as you get closer to Horsham, a bit more rainfall in that area, while in the Riverine of New South Wales, very wet earlier on, but it's got drier in more recent weeks, and around, wait for this, 100 to 200 mil, and as you head further east towards the Great Divide, between 200 and 300 mil. So we certainly have some very big wins and some shocking losses in the rainfall debate.
Yeah, you could say that in the Riverine they've had a good pre-season.
Yes.
But now we're into the season proper, and today they've had a bad day in the Riverina, whilst Yarrawonga's a bit further away, 7.8 mil, Tokemwall 3.4 mil, but in the Riverina itself, no recordings yet at the time we've gone to air.
Interesting. As across Victoria, some of this moisture that's hit South Australia this morning will also come, so these are 24-hour figures, so they may include previous amounts of moisture coming from previous fronts that have come through. But at Wermelang, about 8 mil, and in Birchip, 3.2 mil, while if you're down at Oyen, nothing in the gauge at the moment. No. Murrayville, about 3.2, so that could come across still from South Australia and hit Oyen, but interesting at 1 mil at Japarrit in the Rainbow area. Now, take us away, Ricky, for some South Australian falls, because overnight we've had a good front arrive, but not as big as what many would have liked.
Well, if you're in Clare, if you're up a bit higher there in the Clare Valley, you'll be happy. You're top of the table at the last time we checked at 11 mil. And down there in the central York around Maitland, the Carinya gauge, 10 mil. But Blanchetown, I love Blanchetown. For some reason, it just dumps there every now and then. 8.8 mil last time I checked. So they've done well. They're in the top three. Yeah,
the Barossa Valley is 5.6 mil. At Roseworthy, 4.8 mil. Interesting too at Pinaroo in the Mallee. They've got to 2.5 mil. So it's a little bit less than at Murrayville over the border there. But Woodner, sadly for our West Coast listeners, 0.4, and at Sejuna, just the 1 mil at the moment, while down at Padthaway, 1.6 mil in the upper southeast. Yep. So how do you read it in terms of the sentiment out there? I mean, the farmers we generally are speaking to are saying it's a dry start, but we'll dry sow and so on. Are you reading anything at this point, Ricky, from our news desk from what we're hearing?
Yeah, when I do the agricultural data we report on Fridays at flownews24.com.au, picking up that some farmers are just pulling back a little bit in their seeding efforts, just waiting to see how the opening of the season goes. Some of them, it's legendary what farmers do in this area, but some of them are just cracking on and just expecting the rain to come. We've had a later start, but there has been just a little bit of hesitancy from some farmers in these drier areas that we're reporting. They're maybe just going, well, let's just see, we'll give it another week and then we might crack on.
There's a couple of factors too. In the Riverina, we've talked about mice. In other areas, the mouse the plagues are not as prevalent. But there is the other factor, and that is that there are some that have sown vetch and so on for sheep feed, and without any rain to bring it up, they haven't got the sheep feed in these dry mallee areas.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm reporting on the Friday data from the Meat and Livestock Australia, that you're seeing more sheep showing up in the yards down at Wagga, for instance, whereas before it was much more subdued because they were keeping them in the paddock, fattening them up. But now it's got a bit drier. Suddenly we've got to send them in and get rid of a few. So I think that's definitely what's happening.
And the SA Livestock Exchange at Dublin reporting that some lifting in sheep numbers. But at the same time, with the lack of feed and the reality, we've got hay from last year, albeit the droughts in New South Wales and Queensland had taken a lot of hay stores from southern Australia, but with everyone having a pretty reasonable season, plenty of hay about the place. But a lot of farmers are feeding at the moment and feeding out barley grain rain to their sheep.
Yep.
So we are seeing this, and that will mean prices might just start to lift in those areas if the heavy rains don't come soon.
Well, it does depend. The quality is being reported as quite mixed in South Australia. So how that's turning out in terms of how well that's feeding the animals might not mean that they're coming in at the best quality they could be, whereas in those parts of the riverina, for instance, animals coming off the land are actually coming in pretty good condition.
Okay, and Ricky, we'd love people to communicate with us, wouldn't we, about what rain they're getting?
Well, they might take issue with some of those readings. They might think they should be higher on the ladder. Send us your rainfall gaugings or a photo of your rain gauge, maybe doing a little rain dance, maybe make sure it's safe for social media, though. And we'd love to get those on Flow FM Australia Facebook page.
Is that what you do when you stop at Blanchetown? A bit of a rain dance up there, is that?
I assure you I keep my clothes on.
Unless you're in the river. Yes, some more here coming your way on the Flow Morning Show.